Okay, day 112, the DynCorp harvest. We've been following DynCorp that does these viruses and vaccines. They're doing all this biological weapons and doing all this vaccination testing. And they used to do this testing in Germany, and now it seems like Haiti is the new place for this virus vaccine testing, maybe in Central America as well. And then the other thing I'm going to talk about in this episode is going to be the sex trafficking and so forth. One of the things the Pizzagate folks have found is that there is this girl that was abducted in Portugal, but she's English, named Madeleine McCann, has an odd eye defect. And it turns out a lot of these kids are turning up have this odd eye defect. And the chances of having this defect in your eye is only about 3 or 4 or 5 in 100,000, which is extremely rare. So the fact that a lot of these kids would show up with this is unusual. So I did a little research into this. This is not complete theory yet, but here is the eye defect here. It's called coloboma, and that means boma's tissue, and colo means absence of tissue right there, I believe. I believe it's also called renal coloboma. Also called papillorenal syndrome. The reason is along with this eye defect, it also affects the kidneys. So I looked up a little bit and saw what the defectiveness, what caused the defect, and it's a defective gene called PAX2. So here's a normal cell, and then what happens is, this is not a normal cell. The virus comes into the nucleus of the cell. It actually inserts itself into the DNA here of the PAX2 gene, so that when this cell divides, you get a new diseased cell, and then the cell keeps repeating in a diseased fashion. And then you end up with these little proteins here in the cells that are called Jost-Dengen cells. That's what actually causes the discoloration. So they call them Jost-Dengen inclusion bodies. I did a little research on the beginnings of virus study, and I found this guy, Ernst Jost. That's what these are named after. These inclusion bodies are named after. And he studied at the University of Dresden and then Leipzig, and really did a lot of testing in Leipzig and Dresden of infecting, he was a veterinarian and a pathologist, so they took anomalies that were killing horses, and mainly horses, which would really hurt the economy back then. The economy kind of depended on the horse. And then they were looking at all the different viruses that were caused and how to perhaps genetically crossbreed them to avoid the virus. Well, then there was another guy named Wilhelm Zwick, who started transferring the virus from horses to rabbits. They wanted to get into a thing where they could test a lot of different crossbreeding without killing the horses. This kills the horse. There's a famous paper written that says the horse starts out sad, and then it really goes downhill from there. So the reason why I'm going through this is Mengele has this. Joseph Mengele studies at Leipzig, at the University of Leipzig. He's a doctor, so this is where he does his internship under these guys in the pathology lab of Jost and Zwick. That's where he meets his wife, and that's where he meets his two most influential doctors in his career. He goes from here on the recommendation of Jost and Zwick, to running the institute, or going to the Institute for Race and the Nazi kind of institute, where the Nazi thinking kind of started with the ideas of race and so forth. And that's in 1936. So he is smuggled. He's later smuggled out of in Operation Paperclip by Allen Dulles' folks and a guy named Wolf, who met with the Pope and used the Knights of Malta and everything to get these guys passports and got them all over the world. But most of them ended up in Argentina, all these Nazi war criminal type doctors. It's called the doctor trials. And they go to Argentina and they set up these weird colonies where there's a lot of little girls, and then there's one priest, and then one priest, impregnates all the girls, and they have worker bees there, but mostly it's this kind of genetic, experiment. And this movie, The Colony, is about that. It's about these Argentinian guys who went down to there and, were trying to create a new Germany in Argentina. They were looking at ways that how could we, use viruses to kill off the rest of the population, and then we would surface and then have this new population. So it's kind of sick thinking in a way with the. So yesterday when I said, they bombed Dresden because they were doing all these weird experiments, and they bombed Perna in the war, and it wasn't just for no reason. There was this huge Allied bombing here. That was what I was saying, because the Nazi drug trials, they tried everything. These drug companies worked directly with the Rockefeller Foundation. The IG Farben worked directly with the Rockefeller Foundation. The institute, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin, which kind of was the center for all this eugenic thinking up here, was part built by the Rockefellers. I think the Rothschilds threw in some European oil money as well, but I think half of it came from the Rockefeller Institute. All of it was around these drug trials, and they were infecting all these people with these viruses to see new strains of viruses and to test the vaccines. So the Nazi experiments, everyone says, oh, they were horrible. Obviously, they were horrible, but they were trying. It was what I'm trying to say. It's a for-profit motive here. So getting back to, and someone said that they didn't round up disabled people, and here is the actual 60,000 Deutschmark it cost to have one. This is their Nazi art right here. So I don't know how people can. I mean, I didn't draw that. And then about 70,000 people were killed down here in Sonnenberg, the Euthanasia Institute. But what I wanted to say about Maddie here, Madeleine McCain, is they did a lot of these kids. They affected a lot of these kids. And I'm just wondering if this was kind of like a Nazi marker. So because you pass this on, once the gene replicates, it is passed on to the mother and the father. If this person, it's passed on to the child, whether it's a mother or father, I'm pretty sure. And so this gene will go on for generations. So you would be able to tell your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, just by this eye marker. They didn't have DNA then, so they needed some kind of visible marker. So that in this colony situation, if it ever did, come to light, this eugenics kind of ghoulish, nightmarish, dystopian vision of the world, but if they ever did, come out of the colonies, they would be able to identify all their kids. Now, to add to the intrigue here, supposedly at these centers, these were fathered by Hitler's inner circle, and the kindergartens at these, at Auschwitz and Dachau and Buchenwald and so forth, and Ravensbrück and so forth. They weren't just, just random servants and so forth. They were actually girlfriends of these Nazi high command, like Karl Brandt, who was Hitler's physician. So this kind of colony approach to the death camps. Now, I'm not saying I'm a scholar of Nazi Germany and so forth. Obviously, being Jewish, I have a different angle on all this. But I'm just trying to see, there's folks in the Pizzagate world saying, what is this all about? And that's where, the Hillary connection comes in with Podesta, because they use the Roman Catholic Church to diaspora these folks all over the world. So they needed a way of keeping track of them. And Podesta was kind of one of those find-it men, I think, because the reason why they're valuable now, the reason why these kids are valuable now, I realize this is a little bit extreme as a topic, but the reason why these kids are valuable now is their hearts, their kidneys and so forth, all their organs are almost a perfect genetic match going back to the father. So this is the idea of Charles Lindbergh having the 7 kids and so forth. So I know it's a stretch. I know it's a real outside possibility, but I just wanted to give this to the Pizzagate folks and let them run with it, see if if they could drill down on what kind of experiments Mengele did with this virus. It's called BOMA, a virus disease, BVD. So, okay, I'll have one more targeted this afternoon.